That morning at Westall High School in April of 1966 seemed ordinary. The sun was sharp, the air cool, and dozens of students were running across the field, finishing their physical education class. Laughter and shouts echoed across the yard, until one sound silenced everything: gasps. Heads tilted back, fingers pointed skyward, and normality was instantly broken. Floating above them, without sound, without explanation, was an object no one could name. It shimmered in the blue sky, metallic in its body, yet tinged with subtle hues of purple. Its shape was unmistakable, like a silver saucer with a small dome resting on top. Larger than a car. Bigger than anything these children or their teachers had ever seen hovering so close. No balloon could shine like this. No aircraft could hang so perfectly still, gliding as if gravity no longer applied. What followed was not order, but chaos. Dozens of children screamed and scattered across the open field. Some ran wildly, others froze in place, paralyzed by awe or dread. A ripple of hysteria washed over the crowd, a living storm of fear and disbelief. Teachers called out, trying to restore calm, but their voices trembled, betraying that they too were shaken. Marilyn Smith, a student, would later recall through tears, "We sat on the fence and cried, thinking it was the end of the world. This was no fleeting glimpse. This was no trick of the eye." Every second stretched into eternity, the strange craft dominating the sky, commanding all attention, erasing every sound but the pounding of young, terrified hearts. And then, impossibly, it stayed there, for minutes that piled one on top of another until nearly 20 had passed. The object hovered calmly, almost lazily, as if showing itself to the hundreds of witnesses gathered below. At times it glided, dipping slightly, the sunlight catching the dome. It moved smoothly above the playing fields, then tilted toward the pine forest bordering the school's rear edge. Students cried out that it was going to land. Some swore it hovered low above the treetops, others that it slipped behind the trees entirely, touching down beyond the line of sight. Whatever the truth, the finale was sharp and unmistakable. With sudden acceleration, the craft shot upward, streaking silently across the sky, vanishing into the distance without leaving even a trace of smoke. Only fear remained, and the hollow echo of an encounter that could never be denied. As soon as the shining disk streaked away, the silence broke. A wave of children and even a few adults bolted toward the pine grove, desperate to see what might have been left behind. Breathless, stumbling over one another, they pushed through the grass into the clearing behind the school. And there it was. The ground bore scars. Circles of grass blackened and brittle, pressed down as though by something heavy and hot. The earth itself felt wrong, carrying a faint charred smell no one could explain. Fingers reached out to touch the marks, and the voices of dozens rose up at once, frantic cries that this was proof, undeniable, that the craft had touched this world. The whispers of a joke, of kids' imagination, evaporated as they stared at the burned earth beneath their own feet. Something had been there. But before the excitement could settle into certainty, authority descended. Within hours, the students of Westall High were marched not to their next lesson but into an assembly. The principal stood before them, his expression severe, his tone unyielding. He told them they had seen nothing. There was no craft, no disk in the sky, no marks on the earth. They were ordered to speak of it to no one, not even their families. The story was closed. The children shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some holding back tears, others glaring in silent defiance. How could grown men command them to forget what hundreds had seen with their own eyes? Yet the fear of punishment, the weight of authority, pressed silence onto their lips. The truth was already being buried. By evening, the burying was complete. Local newspapers ran quick, confident headlines: a weather balloon. It had been launched earlier that morning and, carried astray by winds, had drifted across the suburb, confusing the imaginations of hysterical students. Radio broadcasts repeated the same dismissive refrain. There had been no UFO over Westall, just bungled science mistaken for the extraordinary. The official story moved faster than the truth ever could. It was clean, easy, and comfortable for the public to believe. But to the 200 witnesses, the explanation was like a slap in the face. A balloon does not hover for 20 minutes. A balloon does not glimmer metallic under the sun, does not dart away with impossible speed, does not burn scars into the earth, and a balloon, most definitely, does not terrify an entire school. 3 days later, the quiet neighborhood of Westall awoke to the thunder of engines and the heavy boots of soldiers. Military trucks rolled down small suburban roads, stopping near the pine grove where the object had lingered. Uniformed men spread across the site with calm precision, stringing tape, muttering commands, holding back curious students who had returned to see the burned earth again. Witnesses recall the strangers moving with a sense of urgency, kneeling to scoop soil into containers, carefully cutting away patches of scorched grass to seal inside bags. To the onlookers, the question was unspoken but obvious: if it had only been a weather balloon, why treat the ground like radioactive wreckage? And not all who came wore uniforms. Mixed among the soldiers were men dressed in crisp black suits, their shoes far too clean for the dirt underfoot. They moved differently, not collecting samples but scanning faces, stepping quietly into conversations. One by one, locals and students were warned. The phrasing differed, but the message was the same: you didn't see what you think you saw. Stop telling stories. Stop asking questions. The chill of their words lingered in the air long after they moved on, and for many, it was the final nail in their resolve to stay silent. Soon after, the site itself erupted in flames. Some whispered that the landowner, tired of trespassers, had torched the grove, others insisted the military had returned with flamethrowers to erase every clue the soil might hold. By the time the smoke cleared, much of the physical evidence had been reduced to ash. And so the fire spread from earth to memory. In the years that followed, silence settled over Westall heavier than any cloud. Students grew into adults but carried with them a fear of ridicule, shame, and authority. They had lived an extraordinary moment, but most never spoke of it beyond hushed whispers. When asked, they laughed it off, shrugging as if it was childish folly. But deep down, some still woke at night with the image of the disk burning into their minds. Decades later, one of those children, Jeff Holland, could only put it into words this way: like many others, I simply stayed quiet about it, because of the ridicule. But in my mind, I always thought, I know what I saw. Nobody will ever take that from me. Even as the official line hardened and the military erased the traces, curiosity found ways to survive. Independent researchers, Australia's own UFO societies and investigative groups, made their way to Westall within weeks. They tracked down students, teachers, and locals willing to whisper what they had witnessed. They photographed the strange rings of burned grass before the flames destroyed everything. They recorded trembling voices on tape, stories told with the nervous urgency of people who feared being overheard. Yet every answer only seemed to spark new contradictions. Some swore the craft had hovered, others that it landed. Some said silver, others recalled violet glints across its dome. Sorting the truth from the tangle proved maddening. But one fact remained beyond question: more than 200 souls had seen something unexplainable with their own eyes, and they could not all be wrong. The case became both treasure and torment, solid enough to demand attention, shattered enough to remain forever uncertain. For decades the story simmered in the margins, more rumor than history, whispered by locals, mocked by skeptics, and left to rot by officials. Then, half a century after that autumn morning, one man dragged it back into the light. In 2016, researcher and ufologist Shane Ryan unveiled his documentary, Westall 66. He had spent years piecing together testimonies, interviewing now gray witnesses who had once been frightened children standing on a schoolyard looking up at the impossible. On camera, their voices quivered. Some still cried. Yet their words were resolute: I know what I saw. Ryan's message was damning. This had been the largest mass sighting of a UFO in Australian history, and instead of seeking truth, authorities had worked to suppress it, bury it, and ridicule those who held on to it. For the first time in 50 years, witnesses felt justice, even if only in the form of recognition. And yet, what remains of Westall today feels like cruel irony. The Pine Grove is now a quiet reserve, turned into a place for families and children to gather. At its heart sits the Westall UFO Park, a playground crowned with a gleaming silver, flying saucer, sculpture. Bright red lights blink from its edges as children climb across it, laughing, as if mocking the terror once felt there. Some call it a tribute, a sincere attempt to remember. Others see it as an insult, reducing trauma and secrecy into a kitschy display, a carnival mask for one of the most unsettling mysteries Australia has ever faced. If stories like this make you question what's really hiding above us, then don't let this be the last time we meet. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and leave your mark with a like. And tell me, what mysteries should we uncover next? The skies are filled with unanswered questions. Which one do you want to hear whispered in the dark?